She was motionless, so still she almost didn't exist. Just a shadow at the edge of the road, barely more than a memory clinging to the fading daylight. The wheels of the car hummed past, seconds from missing her completely. But something ancient stirred in Megan's chest, a kind of knowing that doesn't come from the eyes. It comes from the soul. She turned sharply toward the forest-laced shoulder, and whispered 3 words that would change everything. "Stop the car," Josh relaxed. Behind the wheel, hesitated. "It's probably just a raccoon," he muttered, trying to shake off the unease. But Megan was already unbuckling, breath catching in her throat. They backed up slowly, tires crunching over gravel and pine needles. And there, barely visible in the golden hush of dying sun, was not a raccoon. It was a Bobcat Kitten. Just, 3 months old, if that. Her small body was crumpled against the earth like discarded cloth, her breath coming in uneven, trembling gasps. Her fur, dusted in blood and dirt, shimmered faintly in the breeze. She didn't run. She didn't blink. She only watched them with eyes like broken glass. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Josh hesitated, standing over the wounded wild thing with the hesitation of a man who sees danger, but senses something holier in its place. "That's a wild animal," he said softly, as though saying it too loud might kill her. "I know," Megan replied, "but we can't leave her." Silence fell like snowfall, heavy, sacred. The air smelled of pine and dust, but all Megan could feel was a weight pressing against her ribs, a need to act. They wrapped her gently in Megan's flannel jacket, afraid even their breath might be too loud, too harsh, too final. She didn't resist. She simply let go, as though she'd been waiting her whole life to be cradled in something soft. In the car, she lay nestled between the weekend groceries, oranges, sparkling water, and one fractured soul. Megan whispered to her during the drive, not words of healing, not instructions, just presence, just love. They called 3 vet clinics. All said no, then 4 more. One answered. "We don't take wild animals," the receptionist said, voice flat like cold steel. "Try animal control?" Animal control transferred them. A state line, another voice. Disconnected after 5 rings. It was dark when they reached home, but something in Megan's arms was darker still, a fading, flickering flame. "Even the sparrow has found a home, a place near your altar." At the final clinic, a private vet with tired eyes examined her in less than a minute. "A wild bobcat?" he murmured. "She won't survive the night. Euthanasia is the kindest option." Megan didn't answer. Her arms tightened around the kitten. You don't let go of something that wants to fight, even if it has no strength left. So they took her home. Not because they knew how to help, not because they were prepared, but because no one else would. In a quiet corner of their den, near the gentle hum of a space heater, they laid her in a laundry basket lined with fleece and silence. She didn't twitch, didn't blink. Megan knelt beside her, spooning soft cat food close. Nothing. The heater clicked. The door shut a little. Too loud, still nothing. She was there, but not here. Like a ghost caught between this life and the next. Megan checked her breathing every hour. At midnight it was thin as thread. At 2 a.m. it barely moved her fur. Josh watched from the couch, helpless, as the woman he loved tried to hold a wild miracle in her hands. "Meg," he whispered, no answer. "We're not trained. She's a wild animal. She's not a pet." Megan looked up, eyes red and raw. She didn't choose to be hit by a car. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. He had no argument for that. No law or logic can stand against the weight of mercy. They had no syringes, no formula, no plan. Just a drawer. In the kitchen, and an old feeding syringe left from a kitten long gone. Megan filled it with warm water and knelt beside the laundry basket. One drop, it fell onto the kitten's fur and disappeared. The next, between her lips. The third, a twitch, a gasp. Life flickered. Megan fed her this way every hour, whispering nothing but presence. Josh watched the sky lighten through the blinds, while the woman beside him refused to let go. At dawn, Megan's head tilted forward in exhaustion, barely able to hold herself upright. Then movement. A flutter. A breath. The kitten turned her head, blinked, and, with the sound of a soul rising from the ashes, hissed, a broken sound. But not surrender, a warning. Though she may be small, she is fierce. Megan's eyes welled, not from fear, from relief. That hiss wasn't just instinct, it was will. It was survival clawing its way back. The next drop of water Megan reached carefully. This time the bobcat reared back. She fell sideways, legs too weak to hold her, but her mouth was open, her teeth bared. "She's going to bite you," Josh whispered. "I know," Megan breathed. But her hands weren't shaking anymore. The bobcat tried to stand again, legs buckled. Still she tried, again and again. A snarl curled in her throat. That was the moment everything changed. Not because they saved her, but because she started saving herself. Megan sat silently beside her, no sudden movements. No forced touches, just her presence. Just breathing, letting the kitten know, "I'm not going anywhere." In the soft shadows of that early morning, a new bond formed, not between human and animal, but between two spirits who refused to give up. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This wasn't just a dramatic wildlife rescue. It was an emotional true story, a story of survival, a soul-to-soul wild bond. The kind that changes a weekend getaway into a life-altering miracle. This bobcat wasn't just rescued. She resurrected. And the humans? They didn't just save a wild animal. They found a piece of themselves, the wild, the compassionate. The eternal dot. It was on the second day that the name rose unspoken from the ashes of doubt and love. Ash. Because she looked like she'd survived fire and ruin. Because her body had nearly become dust on the side of the road. Because something in her, in those wide, frightened eyes, still burned. She was living cinder, a flame refusing to die out. Megan whispered the name first, gently, like a prayer. Josh didn't argue, they both felt it. It fit. That morning he called 5 wildlife rehabilitation centers. Then 6 more. The next day, 3 more names from an online list. Each voice on the other end answered with a new rejection, different words for the same truth. She doesn't belong here. Too young, no space, no room for bobcats kept indoors. One man didn't even pause. "She should have been euthanized," he said coldly. "You're interfering with nature." Josh stood frozen in the hallway after that call, staring at the wall like he was trying to see a version of their lives where this hadn't happened. "This isn't sustainable," he muttered. "She's not a pet, Megan. What's the end of this? We raise her, and then what?" Megan didn't answer. She was focused, fork in hand, crushing boiled chicken into pieces, so tiny they could dissolve on a trembling tongue. Josh kept talking, voice quiet, pained. "Maybe when she's stronger, we could release her somewhere. Somewhere safe. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or danger?" Megan looked up, tears catching in her throat. "Safe?" Her voice cracked. "She can't hunt, Josh. She can't walk without falling." And he said nothing, because he knew she was right. Ash hadn't made a sound in hours. She just lay in her corner of the den, too quiet. Until, just as Megan extended her hand again, holding the crushed chicken like an offering, Ash crept forward, slow, suspicious. Her nose twitched. One lick, then a bite, gentle, curious, not out of hunger, not out of trust. A test. 5 small bites, then she pulled back into the shadows. No celebration, no victory. She ate like it was war. A war she hadn't decided to lose. Her eyes met theirs with the intensity of something ancient. They screamed what words couldn't. "I don't trust you. I don't need you. I'm still afraid. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." By the end of that first week, something shifted. Ash stood on her own, wobbling, unsteady, like a compass needle shaking toward north, but she stood. She moved, she watched. Her muscles twitched with life. She flinched at sudden sounds. crouched low when Josh entered the room. She wouldn't allow herself to be touched for more than a heartbeat, but she was no longer the shattered husk they'd rescued from the roadside. She was waking up. Megan, obsessed with learning everything about her, spent hours on the floor surrounded by notes, bobcat diets, sleep cycles, hunting instincts. "Did you know they chirp to their mothers?" she said one night, eyes wide with wonder. "And they don't meow? Not like cats? Not ever?" Josh, hammer in hand, nodded and set down wooden planks by the back window. "What's that for?" she asked. "A pen," he replied, "in case she gets wild." Megan raised an eyebrow. "She is wild?" Josh didn't argue. He just kept measuring. Ash didn't purr, didn't seek affection. But she made new sounds, low and haunting, throaty echoes that rippled down the hallway in the dark. Sometimes a soft, primal growl, deep and strange in such a small body. The first time it echoed through the house, Megan froze. "That's not a kitten," she whispered. And it wasn't. It was something older than language, something wild, still blooming. Ash stood in the corner, eyes glowing, mouth slightly open. She wasn't threatening. She was speaking. And for the first time, Josh stepped into her world. He moved forward slowly. She watched. She didn't run. They had been thinking of her as a baby, a fragile thing. But in truth, she was ancient and rising, something feral in a young body. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That night, Megan sat beside her again. No expectations, no touch, just presence. Just being. She didn't reach out, only stayed, quiet and still. And slowly, Ash approached. No hiss, no flinch. Just a slow movement forward. Then, as gently as a falling leaf, she lowered her head into Megan's lap. Megan froze, not in fear, but in reverence. It wasn't submission, it was a choice, a gift. She was saying, "I see you, I'll allow you." It was a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after the rescue, when the calm shattered. A white SUV pulled into their gravel driveway, unannounced. No sirens, no decals, just clean faces and practiced eyes. One held a clipboard. The other introduced herself as a field officer from Texas Parks and Wildlife. "Someone in the area reported a bobcat," she said. "We need to see the animal." Megan's heart dropped through the floor. Josh asked questions, calmly, carefully, but they were already walking toward the house. Megan opened the door, hands trembling. Ash was curled in her corner. She looked up. She didn't move. The officer crouched, observed. "How long?" "Have you had her?" she asked. 2 weeks, Josh answered. "We found her dying." The officer nodded slowly. "She still looks young, but she's not domestic, not even close." In the kitchen, over lukewarm coffee and rising panic, the facts were laid bare. Yes, owning a bobcat in Texas can be legal with a Class 1 wildlife permit. Yes, it requires a secure enclosure, proper fencing, safety locks. Yes, inspections. Yes, vet documentation. Yes, rules, and no, they had none of it. "We didn't plan this," Josh said. "We just, couldn't leave her." The officer's eyes were steady. "Intentions don't change the law. Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and oppressed." Megan, hands clenched in her lap, spoke barely. Above a whisper, "She's not a project. She's not just an animal anymore. She trusts us." The officer didn't blink. "She's a baby," Megan added. "Please give us time. We'll follow every rule. We'll do everything. Just don't take her yet." A pause, long and heavy. Papers shuffled. The clipboard clicked. The officer exhaled. 30 days, she said quietly. "That's all I can give you." Megan's eyes filled, a lifeline, a countdown. "If you haven't completed the requirements in 30 days, the officer said as she stood, "we'll have no choice but to remove her." Ash yawned softly from the next room, unaware, still safe. Poor. Now Josh stood at the counter, coffee gone cold in his hands. Megan was across from him, arms hugging her own ribs like she might shatter. "This isn't sustainable," Josh said again, voice hoarse. "We can't do this. We don't have the space, the money, the qualifications." Megan shook her head. "She trusts us." This isn't about trust, Megan. This isn't even about love. This is a wild animal, a predator. What if she lashes out? What if— I'll learn, she interrupted. I'll become what she needs. I'll take full responsibility. Josh looked at her like he didn't recognize the woman he loved. You've gone too far, he said quietly. You're not thinking clearly. You're obsessed. Megan didn't blink. I know exactly what I'm doing. Her voice cracked, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. She was supposed to die. Everyone gave up on her. But she didn't give up. She's alive because we didn't walk away. And I'm not walking away now. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And neither would Ash. Every night, without fail, Ash would make her way to the house. But what she did next left them breathless. She moved like dusk itself, quiet, unhurried, yet commanding the air around her like a memory that refused to fade. Her body had transformed over those long months. No longer the fragile, trembling creature rescued from darkness, Ash now bore the presence of the wild itself, sleek, strong, her golden eyes flickering with wisdom beyond understanding. Her paws left no sound on the gravel path. Her coat, dappled in moonlight, shimmered like water running over stone. The night air, dry and still, always seemed to shift when she appeared. And always, she stopped at the same place, the back door of the house. She never scratched, never cried, never demanded anything. She simply sat, just outside the soft halo of kitchen light spilling onto the porch, her gaze fixed on the warmth within. And though she could have turned away into the wilderness at any time, she never did. Her heart, it seemed, knew where home was now, not just in territory but in love, in the humans who refused to let go, in the bond forged not from ownership but survival. The wild may not speak in words, Megan once whispered, but it remembers everything, she began, leaving the back door open, not all the way, just an inch, maybe two. Not enough for Ash to enter. Just enough for her to know, you're welcome here, always. Josh would catch her doing it sometimes. Those late nights when the house had gone still, and the only sounds were the ticking of the old clock and the soft hum of summer crickets. He'd lean in the doorway, arms folded, watching his wife standing there with the door cracked and her eyes closed like she was listening for something sacred. And more often than not, he'd see Ash sitting in the darkness, watching them. Not as a pet, not as property, but as something older than time. A witness to devotion. A survivor of pain, a miracle they didn't deserve but somehow were chosen to protect. She's not waiting, he murmured one night. She's remembering. And the wind stirred the trees, as if nature itself agreed. The sanctuary enclosure they built for her was a wonder in itself, a sprawling haven of oak-shaded nooks, fresh water that flowed from a man-made stream, tree trunks dragged and positioned for climbing, and soft soil that warmed under the sun. It had everything she could need, but Ash rarely used it all at once. She paced it slowly, like she was marking her gratitude in every paw step, like she was blessing the ground they'd sacrificed everything to give her. Yet no matter how far she wandered, no matter how high she climbed, or how deep into the shadows she melted, she always returned, every night, to that house, to the back door, to the small light that meant, we're still here. The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. Megan began to talk to her through the open door, nothing elaborate. Just small things, how the day had gone, what they were cooking, how the tomatoes were finally growing right this season. And on one extraordinary evening, when the summer sky blushed orange and purple and Ash's silhouette flickered in the last streaks of daylight, Megan spoke the words that had waited too long to be said. Thank you for choosing to stay. Ash didn't move, but her ears turned slightly. Her tail curled around her paws. And that was enough. Josh, ever the realist, tried not to assign too much meaning to it. But even he couldn't ignore what it felt like, the strange, holy quiet between them and that wild creature outside, who should have been gone 100 times over but wasn't. Something unspoken bound them, and none of it could be put on. a permit or listed in a manual or proved with science. It was love, feral, fierce, and free. Word spread over time. First the neighbors, the same ones who once threatened legal action, now dropped by the fence just to catch a glimpse. Then people from towns over, then volunteers, then reporters. The Bobcat miracle, they called her. The cat who chose to stay. Photos of her watching the kitchen light went viral. One shot in particular, taken by a wildlife photographer visiting the sanctuary, showed her in a perfect pose, ears forward, shoulders squared, bathed in light with her eyes glowing like suns. The caption? She remembers the ones who never left her behind. It became more than a story. It became a movement. Donations poured into the sanctuary. State policies shifted slightly around exotic rescues. And Ash, oblivious to all of it, simply lived. She ran, she hunted lizards. She slept. In sunbeams, she dipped her paws in the pond. She watched stars. And always returned home. Megan and Josh never spoke about what might come next, whether Ash would eventually grow more distant, whether the law might change, whether another emergency might shatter what they'd built. But one thing remained firm between them: they would never stop fighting for her. Not because she was theirs, but because she had become part of something sacred. The soul of their home. A silent, watching presence that reminded them both why they chose this life, this fight, this impossible bond. And every night, when the wind blew low and the stars blinked above the oak trees, Ash would return to the porch, sit in the shadows just beyond the door, and remind them, wild hearts never forget love. They never planned for this. Not the rescue, not the commitment, and certainly not the wild creature who would come into their lives like a whisper from the forest and change everything they thought they knew about love. Her name was Ash, small, hunched, nearly invisible when they first saw her, just a tangle of fur and fear tucked behind a broken fence line. Megan remembers the moment still, like a flash etched on the heart, the glint of golden eyes watching her from the shadows, not pleading, not begging, just watching. Josh called her a ghost. Megan called her a question, and that day they answered. They didn't drag her from the wild. They waited. They let her come closer at her own pace, offering nothing but food, space, and time, and slowly the wild came in. Ash didn't want to be held. She didn't want affection or comfort. She wanted safety on her terms. And that's exactly what they gave her. The Lord is near to the broken-hearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Ash had been broken by hunger, by fear, maybe by the hands of someone before. But slowly, day by day, she began to trust again. Not in the way of pets, no tail wags, no purrs, just presence. Just the quiet act of staying. Megan and Josh didn't rescue Ash to own her. They rescued her to honor her. And in doing so, they unknowingly began to heal something inside themselves. Ash was never meant to be a symbol. She was supposed to be a quiet recovery, a chapter in a story that ends with release. But she became more, much more. Megan began sharing pieces of their journey, not with flair or fanfare, but with reverence. A shaky video explaining why cow's milk is dangerous for wild fawns. A post about what to do if you find a baby raccoon alone at dusk, not viral content. Just truth, just love. She never used Ash's image to pull attention. Never turned her into a pet for views. She spoke like a guardian, not a performer. And people listened. A flood of messages began pouring in, some timid, others desperate. We found an injured fox. My son saw your video and wants to help. Thank you for showing how to protect the wild without taming it. Every message added fuel to a quiet, powerful fire. Josh built fences and maintained enclosures. Megan answered emails and made sure every word they shared carried both care and accuracy. Together, they were building something sacred. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Ash had come into their lives like a flicker, but she'd stayed like a flame, the kind that lights. More candles, more voices, more hope. And though she never let them pet her, never climbed into their laps or licked their hands, she gave them more intimacy than any domesticated bond. She gave them purpose, The seasons shifted. Ash grew. The kitten who once crouched under porches now moved like moonlight between trees, silent, breathtaking, wild. Her body was strong, her instincts sharper than ever. By every measure, she was ready to be released. And legally, ethically, she could have been. But every time the gate was opened for cleaning or repair, every time she was given the chance to vanish back into the woods, Ash stayed. She'd disappear for a few hours sometimes, only to return with the dusk, curling beneath the deck like a guardian of the night. It wasn't captivity, it was choice. Her freedom was never taken. She just chose to place her freedom where love lived. Megan watched her often from the kitchen window, mug in hand, heart swelling. Josh called her our wild daughter, not with irony, but with reverence. They had never owned her. But she belonged to them anyway. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. Ash had been given the power to leave. But she stayed not because of bars, but because of bond. A wild animal had taught them the truest form of love. Freely given, never forced, always earned. In that truth, Josh and Megan began to imagine something bigger. What if Ash's story wasn't the end but the beginning? They named it Ash Haven. A quiet rescue on their land for those caught between tragedy and triumph. Not a zoo, not a shelter or refuge. Just like Ash had needed, just like so many others still did. They started small. A raccoon with a shattered leg. A hawk who would never fly again. A fawn left crying beside a mother lost to the road. Each animal came with its own silence, its own scars. But Megan and Josh had learned to listen to the body language, the small gestures, the sounds between breaths. Visitors began arriving, wildlife officers, students, tired parents with curious children. They walked the paths, peeked through the recovery shelters, and heard Megan speak with quiet conviction about responsibility, about respect, about what it means to care without controlling, and always they asked about her, that one. They'd whisper, pointing toward the shadows of the trees, "Is she dangerous?" And Megan would smile. "Yes," she'd say. But also kind. Perfect love casts out fear. Ash had never been tamed. But she'd never harmed. She stood between two worlds, not domesticated, not fully wild. And because of that, people listened. They didn't just see a beautiful creature. They saw responsibility. Ash became the soul of the sanctuary, not a mascot. A mirror. Ash could have vanished 1,000 times. But she didn't. She circled the house at dusk like a sentinel. She greeted the sunrise from the tallest limb of the oak tree like a sovereign. She never meowed, never wore a collar, never asked to be owned, but she chose to stay. And in that choice, she gave Josh and Megan a daily reminder that true connection is never captured, it is earned, honored, and held gently. Megan often said, "She reminds me every day that love isn't always soft. Sometimes it has claws and you care for it anyway." Visitors came and went, animals healed and moved on, but Ash remained. Not as a relic, as a heartbeat. And through her, every person who set foot in Ash Haven left changed, more aware, more humbled, more reverent toward the wild. Let all that you do be done in love. Ash had come as a whisper of the broken wild. And yet her presence became a roar of healing, teaching, and transformation. They saved her. But the truth, the beautiful, unshakable truth is this: she saved them first. Every story here at Jungle Diaries reminds us of the extraordinary power of compassion and how crucial it is to stand for the voiceless. When you watch, share, and support these journeys, you're helping animals like Ash find not just rescue but dignity. Nonprofit rescue centers are the beating heart of wildlife rehabilitation, built not on profit but on purpose. Your voice becomes a sanctuary. Your care becomes a second chance. Support, share, and follow for more emotional animal rescue stories that change lives, because the wild is watching, and sometimes it chooses to stay.